So without further ado, let's welcome our panellists. Obviously the first one we have is Chris, who has introduced himself already. Next up we have Jenny Biggam, who is the CEO of the 7 Stars Agency. Jenny, come on up. It's that long walk to the stage. You can clap if you want, you can cheer, or just sit in silence, however you wish to play it. And secondly and thirdly, by no means least, is Sammy Austin, the head of media for the TUI Group. Welcome, Sammy. Yeah. So guys, and it's a good setup here. So Chris has kindly put those charts up there and kind of set the scene for us in terms of programmatic. But I suppose one place for us to really start is, do we think that the industry truly understands kind of what programmatic is, what it does, and do we think that marketing as an industry really gets it and understands? Who would like to go first on that one?
I don't mind going first. So I think it really varies across agencies and advertisers in terms of our understanding of programmatic. I think it's a really difficult area to get your head around because there's just continually so many different innovations, and I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. So I think you get to a point where you're like, right, I understand this now, I understand programmatic for display, and then you move into a new realm such as video and mobile and now programmatic TV, outdoor radio, and then you have to get your head around it again. So I think in answer to your question, it does vary across advertiser, but I think where we've seen a change is that agencies and partners are definitely more educational now. So I think it's definitely developed over the past few years in terms of our understanding of what it is and what it can do for us as a business.
And is that something you're finding, Chris, when you're going in and you're speaking to brands and you're speaking to agencies? Are you finding a greater wealth of knowledge there in terms of what programmatic is and how it works?
Yeah, for sure it's getting a lot better. And I think, to Sammy's point, and we were discussing just before we came up here, that, particularly in large international organisations, there's a varied degree of understanding from one country to another country, let alone between one advertiser and another. I think the other thing is that in terms of what programmatic is, we could probably go around the room, any room, and ask, what is programmatic? Give me your definition of it, and you'd have a very varied answer. Everybody from it's buying remnant inventory in real time, isn't it? Through to, it's the use of very disparate and large data sets to better inform media buying decisions at the other end of the spectrum. So I think in terms of whether somebody understands it or whether they think they understand it depends a lot on what they think it is to start off with. But there's definitely improvement, but there's definitely a gap still, which I know as an industry we've been talking about for a while.
And Jenny, are you finding clients are much more willing to talk to you about it, to put it onto their agenda? Are they looking to increase budgets? I mean, we see in 2014, $21 billion was spent in the programmatic, and they reckon by 2019, $53 billion will be spent on programmatic advertising. So there's obviously a key increase, and it's interesting. I suppose one of the other big stats I discovered is that 37% of marketeers now are saying that efficiency is 37% believe efficiency is one of the reasons for programmatic. If you span that around 2 years ago, it would have been kind of 99% to 100%. So people are obviously starting to get it.
Yeah, I think agencies and the technology partners and media owners are definitely understanding the space better than they ever have done before. If I'm honest, I don't think clients are overly concerned about programmatic. I think clients are interested in the results and they trust the agencies to pick the right technologies and the right partners to actually drive that ROI. So we don't have clients, for example, coming to us and asking for a programmatic strategy or asking for what percentage of their business should be programmatic within their digital media spends. We have clients that very, very much interested in what technologies we're using and what partners we're using to drive the better results for them. So what they're actually doing is looking for results and looking for ROI, which programmatic is brilliant at delivering. They're not kind of coming to us and saying we need to do programmatic. They don't, in the same way that consumers don't understand programmatic, they don't realise how that communication has been delivered to them and the technologies behind it. So, we would view programmatic as being really important for the future, but very much a kind of an important thing for a media buying company to be able to deliver. It's almost like a buying technology as opposed to a thing that's massively on clients' agenda, in our experience.
Sorry.
Yes, I was just going to say, I do slightly disagree. The other advertisers that I talk to seem to be getting more interested in programmatic, definitely over the past couple of years, and I think they're definitely more interested in what their agencies and their partners are actually doing. And I think what's changed is the types of questions they're asking their agencies and advertisers. So because there's so much press about programmatic and they hear about all of these challenges, they've started questioning some of the things that agencies and their partners are doing. So because there is so much news about it, it also makes advertisers want to spend in programmatic, because they're like, so many other advertisers are doing it, I don't want to fall behind the curve, I should spend more in programmatic and I should have a programmatic strategy, which is why I think so many advertisers have now started thinking about bringing programmatic in-house or working closer with their agencies in order to deliver a programmatic strategy.
And that was actually the point I was going to make in terms of the structure. No, yeah. Absolutely. So are you having to, from an agency perspective and from a client perspective, are you having to change internally in terms of the talent you get, in terms of the setup to be able to deal with programmatic effectively and efficiently?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an agency perspective, we're having to recruit a completely different skill set into the agency. So we're having to recruit people who are much more data literate and much more technology literate. We're having to, it actually changes the whole balance of an agency in terms of the traditional agents metrics that you might look at from an agency perspective around billings per head and things like that are kind of go out the window with programmatic. It's actually labour intensive to do it right, so yeah, it completely changes the type of people that you will see within a media agency in the future.
Yeah, so as an advertiser, I think I've definitely noticed a change in terms of a lot of advertisers want people who specialise more in programmatic to work for them to help try and drive that strategy. Definitely that was the case when I was working at Money Supermarket. I was employed specifically for that purpose. So I think it has changed in that clients are now looking for more people with more skills in that to try and ask the right questions to their agencies and their partners as well. And I think what's changed as well is the way that we work with our agencies. So now advertisers want a lot more say in terms of what partners they should be using and what their strategy actually looks like. And you see a lot of advertisers now saying to their agency, I want to use this product, I want to use this technology provider, and they have a lot more say in what they're trying to do. So there is still definitely a role for agencies, but I think it's more of a collaborative approach with programmatic than the agency just saying, this is what you're going to do and this is how we're going to do it.
And are you finding that as well, Chris?
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
Yeah.
Keep butting in.
No, it's good. It's keeping the debate going. It's fluid.
Personally address your question. So just from our perspective, I think we found that throughout digital. So I think as soon as we started working more in the digital space, advertisers are employing digital specialists, and actually the role of a digital person within a media agency is actually a lot tougher than any other media channel, because you find a much higher degree of client education. And just as we're trying to upskill as an agency, I think clients are upskilling just as quickly in the whole digital area and programmatic and search. And effectively, you've got kind of experts talking to experts. So the role of the agency, which is always to kind of, see more providers, understand more about the landscape, suggest new things to advertisers, becomes increasingly difficult actually in this space.
But also great for people like yourselves, Chris, who can come in and have that education and that background in how the products work and how the industry operates.
Yeah.
Educating both sides.
As I definitely try and balance on this fence between agency and client, it's interesting because we see elements of both in terms of our interaction with brands. So what we're definitely noticing, we work with a lot of large automotive clients like Ford and Lexus, and they have agencies like Team One and Team Detroit, and we're definitely seeing a more sort of cooperative triangle, if you like, between technology provider, brand and agency. We had a year ago, maybe as recent as 6 months ago, the whole, is it going to be agency or is it going to go in-house to the brand and they're going to do it all themselves? And I think what we've seen is a maturity in the market, which is where brands and agencies have both suddenly realised, no, the agency has a place here. There is a requirement for a marketing agency. They have skill sets that we as a technology provider don't have. We're not an agency, we're a tech provider. And they have skills and knowledge that the brand often doesn't have. They may well have a small number of skilled individuals like Sammy. A lot of brands don't have somebody as knowledgeable as Sammy on board, but they certainly don't have normally huge teams. So you start to have this more cooperative triangle between the three. But it talks a lot to what Sammy says. The brands, MasterCard, Vodafone, they're all the same, where the brand seems, and I guess I'm talking about sort of large international brands when I say this, but the brands seem to take a much deeper interest in the technology. They want to be contracted with the tech. And I think a lot of that is because, aside from the media buying element of programmatic in terms of the efficiencies that it drives and the effectiveness that it can drive, the exhaust product of programmatic is an enormous amount of consumer data, which is of use to other stakeholders inside the organisation. It's not just the marketing department. You know, Ford Motor Company's product development department use a lot of the exhaust product off the back of the tens of millions that they spend through the platform. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and it's that demonstrates to me that certainly the very larger brands who have a lot to gain and a lot to lose by adopting or not adopting are starting to get their head around truly what an effective programmatic strategy can bring to them as a brand across more elements of the business just than the marketing department.
And I think that's really interesting. I think the structural thing as well is really interesting. You touched on the fact that you're looking, both of you, Jenny and Sally, looking at brands and agencies looking for those data kind of S people. Do you think that the kind of role of the future marketeer is more of those people that have come from an engineering background, have come from a I suppose a scientific background as opposed to the traditional marketing way? Do you think that's what's going to help educate and drive the role of programmatic and the great evolution of it?
I definitely think that is the case, and you can see that in the type of people and the skills and expertise that they have when you see people fill in these roles. I think one of the main things that we looked for when I was at Money Supermarket, and we do it too, when we're looking for in-house specialists, is that if someone gets the overall concept of what programmatic is and they can understand how all the components fit together, then the rest they can just pick up on the job as experience. So I think there is a certain skill set, but I think if you understand the fundamentals, then the rest you'll just learn on the job itself.
I think I agree with that. I think marketing has always started with consumer insight and understanding customer, and I think technology and programmatic particularly just gives an additional layer of understanding to that. And the fantastic thing about, as you call it, the exhaust product, I never heard that before, I like that. Nick that one. Of the exhaust product is that it's actual behavioural data, so it's not kind of claimed data, or it's not it's not kind of focus group type behaviour, but it's actual purchase behaviour. And I think that's what's critical to, that's what's really changing marketing now, that absolute understanding of what people are actually doing and what type of people are actually doing what.
Yeah, I agree completely with Jenny, and I think that this debate, we love a debate in our industry. Is it going to be data analysts that drive marketing going forward, or and what about the creative guys? They're getting very disgruntled about this. It's all about technology now, and it's taking the soul out of the creativity of advertising. And the truth, as is so often the case, is it's both, right? You can't have data-driven analysts trying to come up with creative concepts for brands. It's not going to work. And similarly, you can't ask creative people to figure out, which audience group should we be talking to about which message in which way. So the truth of the matter is there's a place for both. And Jenny raises a very, very good point. All programmatic is doing is adding an additional rich layer of further audience understanding on top of what they already have. So if anything, it's yes, you need data analysts and technical capability in your operational team, but equally from a creative perspective, and not wanting to sort of sidetrack the conversation, the creative element of the industry needs to get their head around the idea. All it's doing is giving you a lot more insight into the characteristics of those audiences, so that you can better tailor creativity for use in programmatic channels. The two things should come hand in hand and work together quite nicely. And
just quickly on that skill set question, there's also transferable skills from some areas of marketing to the others. So you see a lot of teams now where historically those teams were paid search specialists moving into the programmatic space. So actually you can still use the people that you have and just get them involved in a new area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right there, and